I'm Allison Teal of Allison's Adventures.
One. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Trucking with Authority. I'm your host, Kenny Long, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in business, especially the trucking business. We can talk about anything here on the show, from getting started as a driver to buying your first truck, leasing to a carrier, changing to a new carrier, getting your own authority, working with brokers, finding freight, dealing with load boards, dealing with the regulations, the FMCSA, insurance regulations, record-keeping requirements, the states, everything in between. You name it, this is the show for you. Now, few of those topics I think have been lost over the years. The name of the show is Trucking with Authority. And in the beginning, this show was all about how to get your authority and to go about that process. But as the years have gone by, it has morphed into just general information about the trucking business and how to be successful. Getting your own authority is one step that some folks may take, but it's not for everybody. The past few weeks, as rates have been booming, the industry has just been rocking. A lot of new things have come to my attention. A lot of people are making big changes and making big decisions. And there's some information out there and some, the lunch counter talk about pros and cons of getting your own authority. Should you do it? Should you not do it? What is the benefit of having your own authority versus leasing to a carrier? And honestly, in a lot of ways, as much as I think it is a good time to get your own authority, it may not be the best decision for everyone. Now, there is a lot of reasons why you may want to hold off, may want to lease to a carrier, or maybe even your business model should be that you should lease to a carrier and stay leased to a carrier long term. There's a lot of big, important things that a carrier can do for you that when you go on your own and you take that responsibility upon yourself, and frankly, it's easy to get your authority, but there's a lot of information that you really should know. Now, listening to this show, discussing things in the Facebook groups, talking to other professionals in the industry will help you get there. And certainly, you could just go down, get your insurance, get your authority, and jump into business and go full steam with both feet, just hit it running. But there is a lot of risk in this industry. And if you don't know what you're doing, it could be a very short-lived venture. So let's talk about that tonight. We're streaming live on all the platforms. We are on Blog Talk Radio. If you're watching one of the live streams, it's 917-889-9924. The number's at the bottom of your screen. Again, 917-889-9924. This is a call-in radio show. Elizabeth is in the other room screening calls now. Don't be shy. If you have anything that you'd like to add, questions, comments, the best way to do it is over the phones. I will do my best to get the Facebook and YouTube comments, and I'll get to those questions and things toward the end, but it's very difficult with everything I've got going on to try to get to that while I'm running the switchboard and so forth. So best way to get your questions on, call the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. And of course, if you are driving and you are trying to watch this video on YouTube or Facebook, if you are watching a video while you're driving, please turn the video off, call the number 917-889-9924. You can listen through your headset. You can participate in the call. Even if you don't participate, even if you don't want to add your comments, questions, and so forth, you can just listen live through your headset. It's a lot safer. Please don't be watching a video while you're driving. Just want to put that disclaimer out there. That is the reason that I have all of these different platforms to try to allow you access to the information. So we have a lot of callers coming on tonight already. We are getting a bit of a late start due to some technical issues. We recently installed some new computer software and trying to get all that synced up, changing passwords and everything else that's gone into this system. Delayed us a few minutes, but we're going to hit the ground running here. So if you have any questions, your questions or comments will be the priority. Again, call the number 917-889-9924. Once you get on, Elizabeth is in the next room screening calls. Press 1 on your keypad. That will raise your hand. It won't just bring you live, so don't be afraid of it. And she will get your name and your question and so forth, and we can get you on and get your questions answered. Even if you are afraid to come on the air, you can ask the question to Elizabeth and she will relay the message to me. So a few things that I have noticed in the process of growing my fleet. And I will tell you why I got my authority to begin with and my journey in this industry. Now, I've never really been a company driver. I've always been self-employed. Now, I have been leased to carriers. I had a truck leased on to a couple of different carriers. And of course, obviously the name of my company is Patriot Star, and the reason I named the company Patriot Star is because I was in uniform in Iraq when I named it. My truck was back here in the States up on blocks while I was gone for a year. I kept the truck, and when I came back, I put it back to work. Now, my plan was I thought that I would lease it back to the carrier I was previously with, and I would continue my business leased to that carrier. It was never my intention to get my own authority. The reason that I did it was because Elizabeth wanted to go on the truck with me, and in order to train her, there was a lot of hoops to jump through. And it was extremely expensive to go out on my own with a brand new CDL driver, her, and train her. But that at the time was the best option we had. If it wasn't for that, we never would have even gotten our own authority. Because honestly, there are opportunities out there that in many ways exceed the abilities and the opportunities and all of the potential that you have, even if you're leased to a carrier. Now, I already see a lot of comments on the Facebook stream making some comments about this. So I will get to those, but please, if you're on Facebook, please jump in on the phone lines, 917-889-9924. Don't be afraid of it. So, when we got our authority, now, her and I did it in early 2012, we went active. Now, in 2012, the way the freight market was, we were not, I mean, it was decent demand. We knew our numbers. I had been doing this for almost 15 years prior to that. I had a pretty good handle on the business side of it, but going out on my own was a completely new venture as far as interstate. Now, I'd always had my own authority, so to speak, intrastate, local work and so forth, but not interstate type work. So there was some new things I had to learn. Working with brokers directly was one of those. I found that negotiations with brokers was very, very different than it was when I was leased to a carrier. And the carrier I was leased to allowed me to talk directly to brokers or agents, but talking to brokers on my own was a completely new, just the idea in general was new to me, but the attitude that I got from brokers was very different than I expected. As a matter of fact, in my business now, we have the option, and the way we're structured is you are self-dispatch and you can talk to brokers one-on-one, and we recently had a driver that just couldn't take it. He couldn't handle talking to the brokers because they can be tough. They're tough negotiators. And if you don't have thick enough skin for it, it can get to you. So, there are disadvantages to only being able to work through brokers that you have no big relationship with. Now, some of the pros of being leased to a carrier were I could talk to anybody. I could work any load that was available. I could do it. No questions asked. It was simple. It got to be more difficult when we got our authority. It wasn't until I started to get 4 or 5 trucks, and now we're up to 15 trucks. Now we start to get enough attention that the brokers care. The different companies that we work with give us the time of day. As a one-truck operation, it was very, very difficult. Not to say it can't be done. For the past few years, I've been telling all of you to go out and get your own authority. So certainly there's opportunity there. But there is a lot to be said for working through a carrier that has a small fleet that has some leverage in the industry. One of my drivers happens to be on the phones now. Let me bring Jason on. I think he's actually the one that inspired me to do this show. And let me bring him on and he can tell you his story. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So yeah, Jason, you were the one telling me that this was a good idea because you found it to be eye-opening, leaving a mega carrier coming to a smaller fleet, but getting your own authority, may not have worked out the same as you had planned originally.
Yeah, originally my plans were, my end goal was my own authority. But the more that I am seeing the response that we are getting from the brokers, just as you said, with the reputation that we are developing, when we call brokers, the negotiation is getting easier every time because we are able to trade on the backs of the other contractors that we have here. And the group together exceeds what any individual can do when you have a solid group that you're working with.
And the group that we've put together has exceeded my expectations, and the camaraderie and the willingness to work together is something that you don't find, especially at the mega fleets. It's very hard to develop that when you have 8,000 trucks on the fleet. So the difference between leasing to a mega fleet versus leasing to a small fleet versus getting your own authority is a whole different topic, really. But certainly, just having the right group of people, the core group that has the communication and the skills and can make the impression, because when you have 8,000 trucks, yeah, everybody knows your name, but they know you by a number. They know the carrier's name, but they know you by number, and you just become lost in the pool. Versus when you have a small carrier, they really know individual drivers by name.
Yeah, and I mean, with the way things are set up now with the self-dispatch and stuff, I control what my truck does, when it does it, and how it does it. And I still have all the flexibility I had on my own. I have the support of a back office, but the biggest benefit that I am seeing, and this was not anything that I had ever considered until I started seeing how things were developing here, was what the ability to function as a group and trade as a group. If you are one or two trucks, you may get a relationship with one or two brokers that you service, at a fairly decent frequency. But now with 15 trucks, there's a bigger chance that we are able to help that broker out when he needs it. And he knows that, it's going to be taken care of correctly because we treat all of them like they're our only customer.
Absolutely. Now you're on the flatbed side, and the rates that you have been able to pull together and all the other platform operators have been phenomenal. But our vans are watching what you're doing, and they're getting motivated to do that. And some of our vans are, they're looking at the flatbed numbers. It's just two completely different worlds out there. But the vans are looking at this and challenging themselves to try to do what you guys are doing. And it's definitely a completely different business model when you're pulling a van versus a flatbed. But having that little bit of a challenge, and I've seen you try to manipulate your numbers as well, trying to beat up on the vans for different things like fuel mileage and things like that. But there's a camaraderie between the whole group that has really been a driving force for success.
Well, just like on the flatbed side, we're fighting over a pink flamingo that costs $3 because whoever had the highest rate per mile for the month gets to throw it on their dash. It costs $3. It means nothing, but it's something to motivate us and keep all of us focused on what we're doing.
Exactly. And, challenging each other, pushing each other for higher rates. And, you have been able to leverage that and talk to, the right brokers at the right time. You've learned the markets, and, they have called asking for you specifically. They've called asking for the other flatbed drivers specifically, knowing, and they call asking, where's Jason today? What's going on with Chris? And, where are your trucks now? They call asking by name. They don't say, hey, do you have anybody in this area? They literally say, is Jason available in such and such place today? He did this load for us last week. He did a great job. We'd love to have him on again. And that's the type of thing that you really develop, because they know that with a fleet, you have enough capacity that you'll be able to make it happen. Now, we also have another run that's happening right now, actually. Two of our van drivers are on this, and they are going to be pushing numbers that the flatbed guys are doing, these two vans, and for the next 3 weeks are dedicated on this particular run. We were able to secure it because we had multiple trucks, and we were able to relay the information back and forth between them, and they can communicate together. And they're on a dedicated run from Florida to the Midwest, back and forth, and they're staggered. So when one's going north, the other one's going south, And they were able to coordinate that together, and we were able to land that freight and secure those loads for the next 3 weeks dedicated at phenomenal rates. But that wouldn't have happened at one of the mega carriers. You couldn't have done it if you only had one truck available, or even if you had 2 trucks available and trying to service customers across the country, because we have other customers, dedicated lanes and things that we have to take care of. You can't service these things with just 1 or 2 trucks, and it's very difficult to go out and land dedicated stuff like this as a brand new carrier.
And, right now with the way the market is, especially on the open deck division, you can go out with your own authority right now, and you can make a good living at it right now.
Yeah.
But when things slow back down, that broker's going to remember the reputation that the 15 of us have developed with them. And when things are tight for us, a lot of times they're tight for the brokers too. If the economy slows down, they don't want to send a bad truck into a customer and risk them losing that customer. So when it comes down to it, they're going to call us back up, because there's the odds of us having the truck in the area, and they know that when we go in there, their customer's going to be happy. So therefore, our customer is happy. And that the group is what I was not expecting, the value of the small group, because with the megas, you don't have a value as a group, because they'll just throw another truck in, and the service is what it is. We trade on service, and our service will be recognized when things slow down.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing, I had Elizabeth give me some notes on what she sees from her side, because I'm more on the compliance side, and Elizabeth is more, on the customer relations side, we'll say. And so she's talking to customers and to brokers, and she's kind of the middle person between billing. We have another person here in the office that exclusively handles our billing and receivables and things like that. And her note right here is back office. The carrier provides the back office support. Now, we have 15 trucks, and I'm in the truck semi-part-time right now. If somebody needs something filled in, I can jump in, try to do just local stuff. But ultimately, I consider myself full-time in the office. Elizabeth is full-time in the office, and we have another employee full-time in the office here. 15 trucks, and we have 3 full-time employees in the office, and I'm more than full-time. I come in the morning, and I'm here until 10, 11 o'clock at night most nights. With 15 trucks, it requires 3 full-time employees. If you think about it, just 1 truck is going to require quite a bit of effort.
Yeah.
There's the billing, the receivables, the follow-up on that. And it doesn't matter if you factor, it doesn't matter if, how you have that set up. You still have the follow-through and everything with the back office. The biggest thing that I see, and I know that you've seen it too, Jason, because you've kind of heard our discussions about it, is the risk factor. I think as a carrier, we are extremely careful with contracts. We're extremely careful with the risk that we take. And I know for a fact that better than 90%, probably better than 95% of the new carriers out there don't understand how much risk they're getting into, don't understand the contracts, don't understand everything they need to do to be compliant. And they're out there, like Wild West, just trying to swing it and make it happen. And in this market, when you can fall out of the truck into a pile of money, that's easy. But it's extremely risky to be, exposing yourself to that much when the market turns. And it might be 6 months, it could be a year, 2 years, maybe 5 years from now. But eventually, this market will level out and plateau, and the rates will be at cost. And if you don't have the back office support and the back office and the systems in place, it's very, very difficult to survive that. And with only, especially if you're by yourself in the truck trying to run the business, it's a little bit better if you have at least a spouse or somebody at home helping, but it could be very, very difficult on your own.
Even being leased onto a small carrier, my wife will tell you that she doesn't ever get in a truck, and she has a full-time job just keeping track of everything and helping me with making sure that I have everything in order and that I have all my emails in order and that all my communications with you and with my customers are correct. So, and we don't have to deal with billing or receivables or collections. That's just helping me keep track of everything and keep track of the maintenance schedule on the truck and, making sure that my bobtail insurance is paid when it's supposed to. I mean, she'll tell you she puts as many hours in for my truck as she does on her job.
And if you were leased or had your own authority, rather, I mean, it would be double that for her. There is so much more paperwork with billing and follow-up. And, the risk factor alone, every time, we've been in business now, like I said, on our own authority like this since 2012. And I can scroll through. We are set up with thousands of brokers every single day. I don't know how it's even possible, but every single day we fill out at least one carrier packet. Most days it's 3 or 4 carrier packets every single day, and we've been doing that for 5 or 6 years now. So, I mean, thousands of brokers that we're already set up with. If you're a one-truck operation and you're out there and, trying to book that load, and I know it's frustrating. It's hard for us even when we have a broker agreement that we just can't sign, something we have to negotiate and have to call you guys on the road and say, look, we can't work with this broker for whatever reason. And we do our best to try to negotiate that. But there are times when it's just so bad we can't do it. But if you're a one-truck operation and that load is the only thing you've got available and you spent an hour on it and you don't have any support, anything, I mean, you're dead in the water. You lose a whole day of revenue right there.
And as that one-truck carrier, you have very little negotiation with that broker to get them to make some modifications to their contract. And, with a small fleet, you do have a little bit of negotiating power there because they need our services right now with this current market. And also, all these trucking companies talk, all these small brokers talk too. I've got cold called because, hey, I'm friends with such and such at such and such brokerage, and they told us you all do a great service, and they've cold called me to see where we're at. So they all talk too, and I mean that little bit of negotiation power can make all the difference in whether they'll accept your changes to the contract or not.
Absolutely. And, while you're out there on the road trying to book a load, fill out the contracts, get the rate confirmations, you still have to try to make sure you get it to the shipper and to the receiver on time. Then you have to bill the load, and that doesn't mean just, sending in the invoices or sending in the bills to your carrier and then next week you get paid. It means you have to print out the invoice. You have to send it sometimes by mail, snail mail, put a stamp on it. Then 30 days later, you have to see if you got the money in the bank or get the check, which is also difficult. With a carrier, most carriers pay at least weekly. I know there are some that stretch that out as far as they can, but most carriers pay weekly and they absorb that risk. So if there's something in the contract that they agree to, you as the owner-operator are not exposed to that risk. So, there's been times when, that there'll be a broker or a customer that maybe doesn't have a good enough credit score. There's things about the load that are questionable, and we will tell you that we're not going to accept the risk. But we do give you the option. If you would like to accept the risk, you can go ahead and do that. But if we accept the risk, if for some reason we don't get paid, or for some reason, we get sued, or for some reason the broker goes bankrupt, and by the way, factoring companies won't protect you from any of this stuff for the most part. If you don't get paid or you get short paid, anything short of, it being the driver's fault because of negligence, we as the carrier absorb that. But if you are a one-truck operation, and I can give you a quick story. If you follow me on Facebook, recently we had a broker, 2016, we had a broker that we worked with, and we did several loads for them, and they owed us about $18,000. In June, they made 2 payments totaling about $15,000. Now, this was in 2016. So they still owed us about 3. And they filed bankruptcy in September. Now, fast forward to 2018, a couple of years later, we get a letter in the mail from the bankruptcy court that says we have to pay that money back. As a carrier, we have to pay that money back because they filed bankruptcy and they paid us within a certain period of time. And when they paid us within that certain period of time, it was considered a preferential payment. In other words, they were trying to dump all their cash, pay off who they could, And, you know, maybe the big creditors, they might have owed $1 million to some of the big guys, but they only owed, you know, 18,000 to us. Let it get the little guys paid off, and that's, you know, that many less people they have to deal with in court later, right? So that's considered a preferential payment. Well, 2 years later, the bankruptcy court wants us to pay all of that money back. Now, I'm going to fight that tooth and nail, of course, but you don't have to fight that. You don't have to deal with that. You got paid, and you're done. End of story. Yep. If it was I was factoring this money 2 years later, the factoring company would not protect us from this. This is a big misnomer. A factoring company would not protect us. Most factoring agreements, if a broker files bankruptcy beyond 30 days from when the invoice was sent in, that non-recourse agreement won't cover it anyway. Now, we're talking about a potential lawsuit that's coming up 2 years later. That factoring company has washed their hands of this. There's no factoring company that can protect you. Okay, so we'll throw that right out there. But you, as an owner-operator leased to a carrier, you are protected. Now, I've got another friend of mine, has one truck, was working for this same broker with one truck, and the same thing, the bankruptcy court is demanding $25,000 back. Of course, he's going to fight it tooth and nail, but $25,000 is going to put that one truck operation out of business unless the courts show mercy on him and somehow waive that. But a one truck operation with a new authority that takes these risks on the contracts, and I'm super strict on contracts, everybody knows that, and this still came back in our faces because there's nothing that a contract between you and a customer or a broker can do to prevent what the bankruptcy court's going to do. We got our money. We were paid. We're still going into court for this, but the owner-operators that are leased to us don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And there's also other things that are nobody even considers. If one of our trucks were to go down under a load, you have arrangements set up where we could get to a rental truck and get it quickly and not have to go through all the credit checks to try and rent a truck in order to provide for our customer.
Correct.
You know, it's not an ideal situation, but it's a benefit that's there for us. And there's also the potential of one of the other trucks being in the market to come and repower our load and take care and service our customer.
Correct, which we have done recently. We had a truck go down. Well, actually, in the same situation, both of those came up. We had a truck go down in western Tennessee. We managed to get a rental truck to get the load delivered, and then one of our other trucks was able to pick up that tractor and take it back to their home base to get the engine work done. And so, absolutely, we were able to do that all in-house and definitely saved a lot of money to the owner-operator of that truck, the owner, because we were able to handle it versus if you would try to hire an outside carrier or a towing company to tow a tractor across the country, it's not even possible for a one-truck operation. I mean, we're talking big money. So, but we were able to provide that service in-house because we have the capabilities. Now, a one-truck...
The diversity that we are...
Let's say a one-truck operation had that same situation happened. The one-truck operation would have to go down, set up an account with one of the rental companies, Ryder or Penske, probably have to put down a substantial sum of money, $5,000 to $10,000, go through a credit check, give all of the company financials. If you're lucky, you could get approved same day to repower that load, but it may take a few days. If you got the load the same day, now you've given the rental company the $5,000 or so forth for the down payment. You still have your truck, and you may have to spend another $3,000 to $5,000 to have it towed 2 or 3 states over. Versus we have the ability, we can rent the trucks, and granted, we're only a 15-truck fleet, but we already have those accounts set up. We already have those abilities to do those things.
Yeah, and now where we're looking into bulk ordering of supplies and equipment and stuff too is a benefit that the group can provide us that's not going to be there for the individual. And the diversity that we're able to offer a broker now on the flatbed side is something you're never going to be able to do with 1 or 2 trucks.
Absolutely. And I will add a little plug for our carrier, Patriot Star. We have provided the Fleet One card through NASTIC, but we have grown to the point now where we may even qualify for other discounts. So I'm looking at other possible fuel savings programs, which could be huge. That's something else you can't get at the 1 or 2 truck level. You know, it pretty much takes 15 trucks minimum to be able to meet these limits that they would require to be able to get the volume discounts. But we're right there at that point, and that's kind of what we've been striving for. The other one is insurance. You know, if you lease to a carrier, now this goes back to why I think the carrier should be responsible to pay for insurance. Now there are carriers out there that are, you know, 75, 100, 150 trucks, and they back charge for insurance, which I think is completely backwards. I've said this before. I think the carrier should cover the insurance out of the percentage. Now, I've had people come to me, and we do charge 20%, so it's 80% to the owner-operator. But at that 20%, we cover all of the liability and cargo insurance. Now, when you go home, you take a week off, you don't have to pay for your insurance. Now, the big carriers, talking about the discounts, the mega carriers, or even the 100-truck fleets, typically they are on a revenue-based or a mileage-based type program. And if they are back charging the owner-operators for the insurance, when they go home for a week, they don't have any insurance expense. But I know that the carriers are still charging them for that. If they run 4,000 or 5,000 miles per week, their insurance cost should be higher for that truck. If they're running a team, the insurance cost is higher. They're not equalizing that properly. So I think a good carrier that covers the expenses is also important, so that the owner-operator doesn't have to worry about these things.
Yes.
Okay. We've got a couple calls. You mind staying on the line, Jason? Because I know you've got other things you might want to add along here. All right. I'm going to bring Clyde from Connecticut on. Clyde, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Kenny. I've learned so much from you over the years. I've never called in, so I'm a bit nervous this evening. But I just, I really appreciate this topic, and I've been leased to a carrier, a larger carrier probably, for a while. But I guess I'm in open deck. Just to give you a little bit of background, I often have people come up to me and you know, they want to know what percentage I get from the carrier and details. And then I guess I'm saying I kind of get slammed a lot of times by other folks, owner operators, that feel like you're giving up so much, and you know, you should be a true independent, I guess. But for me, I like to work about 10 months out of the year. I'm also a crop farmer, so I'm a crop farmer and a truck driver. And this allows me, you know, being leased to a carrier allows me to, at a relatively spur of the moment, when the weather cooperates, I can pull off and you know, get out in the field when I need to. I don't have to worry about keeping customers happy in the sense of, you know, trying to service the accounts or something on that end. As I agree to do a load, you know, I follow through with that, and then I'm done, you know. And also, recently, we've been doing, an example would be loads with the recent storms in the Northeast. We've been doing some loads to assist with that for utility companies, and those are loads that, as a one-off truck, you wouldn't get a hold of these loads even these are accounts that they're looking for bigger carriers. So and you have to be there. You can't even be a couple minutes late, and you're
Right.
constantly tracked. And some of these loads, a couple weeks ago, they were we were doing loads that were $3,800 on 270 miles, and you'll never see those loads as a one-off. Also, we had some $8 a mile loads for a while. Same deal, utility stuff. Giving up 25% being leased to a carrier doesn't feel so bad in those situations. And just a little bit more, I run Western PA and Eastern Ohio to Boston and Maine. That's my main lane. I don't like the Northeast, but that's where I find the money. A tremendous amount of money to be made in the current market. But that's a little bit what I had to say.
Yeah. Well, let me touch on a couple of those things. I mentioned, we have 2 of our vans right now that are on a dedicated job for the next 3 weeks. And they're going to be pulling in phenomenal numbers for the next 3 weeks because we had 2 trucks that we could dedicate to it. And I'll tell you this, it was another situation where they have a crew there. They had to, that truck had to pick up in that window, and it gave us a 2-hour window to pick up. But that truck was coming out of the other side of Missouri when they booked the load, actually coming out of Kansas, the other side of Missouri when they booked the load, came out of Orlando, Florida area here, and couldn't make it in time. I was able, because it's local here, I mentioned I jump in the truck from time to time, I was able to go load the trailer, bring it back to my yard, and they were able to just swap trailers, and he was able to pull that load. If he was a one-truck operation, not going to happen. Not going to happen. I was able to make that,
Yes.
And if we did not have 2 trucks available to do this, they were not interested. They would have given it to another fleet.
Yes.
They're not interested in working. Now
that happens. Go ahead.
There's a lot of stuff out there. As a broker also, I see a lot of the work that we do requires a lot of behind-the-scenes logistics. It's not as simple as just send a truck in there, pick it up, and go. I personally have traveled to some of the job sites to make sure that this stuff was loaded properly. There's more to it. Now, I would not want to deal with an outside third-party carrier, and I suppose it could happen, but it would be much more difficult for me as a broker to send in a third-party carrier to do things on a job that are so specific that I have gone 3 states over to the job site to make sure it got done correctly. So, there are loads that brokers are just not giving out to just anybody. They're either giving it to carriers that they have built long-term relationships with, that they know they can trust, or they're carriers that they're bringing it in-house. They're only using their own trucks for it like we did. So, absolutely, there's a lot of freight out there on the broker boards, but there's a lot of stuff that the brokers or the carriers, and most of the big brokers have their own trucks. And those that do, they're putting it on their own trucks first. I guarantee it. So certainly there's a lot of freight available. There's a lot of opportunity on the broker side and off the load boards, but there's a lot more when you're able to do it in-house. So a lot of opportunity with both of those.
Yeah, there's 2 other things I just thought of. Tire discounts, fuel discounts are tremendous. I see fuel discounts occasionally almost up to 80 cents a gallon. 50 cents is very common. Tires, I just bought 8 tires here a while back, and about 40% discount on tires as well. So when I put it all together for me and for what I'm about currently, it works for me,
Right. Well, let me touch on the discount stuff. A lot of the discounts, and I guess this is it's not really a pro or a con either way, but for those that get their own authority, even as a one-truck carrier, there are a lot of brokers that you can work with that I may be able to, I don't know what carrier you happen to be leased to, but some of the bigger carriers that have brokerages, as a preferred carrier that works through that brokerage, we are capable of tapping into those same discounts. So those of you that are wondering, what should I do about the group discounts and things like that, there is the ability to go in, work with different carriers, get the discounts. I am able to get some pretty decent tire discounts. I'm able to get fuel discounts, and some of the discounts that we get rival the mega fleets. Even if we don't get the same discounts, we can get really close. As a one-truck operation, there are a lot of opportunities to tap into those discounts as well. However, it is extremely beneficial to be able to sign on with a carrier that already has those connections set up. Because when you blow a tire on the side of the road, the last thing on your mind is, how do I find the tire discount? How do I get that set up? Who do I send the forms to? Whereas if you're already set up with them through the carrier, it's extremely easy to just jump on and get the discounts you needed.
Yeah.
All right, Clyde. So thank you very much for the call. And, there are absolutely benefits. And as far as some of these discounts, it is beneficial to lease to some of the mega carriers. You've got the Landstars and Mercers out there, and those carriers are pushing, they're taking 60, they're only passing 63, 64% on to the owner operator. And the way they justify that is with the huge discounts that you can get. And they do offer extreme discounts. Everything from new truck purchases down to tires and fuel. The discounts are amazing. And that, in many cases, does offset some of that different cost. That being said, as a small up-and-coming carrier, we have been able to tap into some pretty decent discount programs, and in some cases rival that. And the ability to close the gap on some of the deadhead and work with more customers because we're not locked into something concrete. I remember when I was leased to Landstar, and nothing against Landstar, it's a great company, but when I was leased to them, I used to make a pretty regular run up to the Canadian border right in Maine, Presque Isle, Maine. And it was always in my mind, in my plan, to deadhead from there all the way back out. The first day on my authority, one of the first trips we took was up there, and we got it as a broker load through Landstar. And I was amazed to find that just half a mile down the road, I was able to get another brokered load back out, which had never happened to me before because Landstar, the carrier I was leased to, never had that opportunity. Now, when you work with a small carrier, it's very easy to work with new customers. I was actually just talking to somebody earlier today. They have one of the mega carriers that they're leased to, and they're able to self-dispatch. They're able to work with just about anybody. But if there's a new carrier that they want to set up with, it can take days to weeks to get approval to work with that carrier. So you won't be able to do a load on the fly with that particular broker. So, that load is not going to happen. So it doesn't matter that you're self-dispatched. You only have access to what's in the system. Versus when you're with a small carrier and you can call like Elizabeth and I are the owners. We are the decision makers on the contracts and the billing and everything else. You can call us directly. So what it comes down to is this is the best middle ground, the best place to be, closest thing you will get to having your own authority, but you don't take nearly as much risk and you have access to everything already set up. And since all these guys have come over, we've been changing our systems, updating our systems, and doing everything in our power to make it better for the owner operators. But that has all come from input from them. And I've been doing this for several years now, and I'm getting new ideas, fresh ideas. So when you go into a one truck operation, you're a brand new carrier, you don't have any of the camaraderie and the ideas, the brainstorming that goes on with a group like we have.
And Kenny,
yep.
One of the things too that is almost just to play the devil's advocate side of it. I hear some people talking about, I go into small carriers as being like a transition or a stepping stone. In reality, with a small carrier, if you want to ultimately succeed to the maximum abilities, you're still going to operate it just like you were that one truck owner operator. And we have the freedom to operate it that way, and allows us to treat our customers like we are the only person that they have to deal with in the matter. When we deal with our customers, when we deal with a broker, we agree to everything. They don't have to call you up and say, hey, I spoke with your driver on this. We're the ones that make our negotiations. We're the ones that build our relationships. You're the one that give us the platform to do that. But it's still our relationship that we are building. And it really and truly is, it's the ultimate freedom with the least amount of liability.
I'll show you right here. Elizabeth's got the note. It says partner, not a number. And that's what it comes down to. I remember we were just talking last week. We were bringing on some new trucks and getting new, decals and everything made up for the new trucks. And we were talking about how some of these trucks, they bring them in the mega fleet, they literally issue mailbox numbers. So you go out there and walk through the parking lot and you'll see these carriers out there. They have mailbox numbers. And when you call, if one of those drivers in the mailbox number trucks calls their, corporate office, that's the number. That's what they recognize them by. Versus Jason, when you call me, I usually answer the phone and say, hey, Jason, what's going on today? That's how I answer the phone, because I know it's you calling me. You are programmed into my cell phone. You call the owner of the company. I know who you are. I answer by name. When you're on one of these mailbox number companies, you call up, and the first thing they do is they have to get your mailbox number and the numbers that are on the hood that they issued to you. And you give them that number. Takes them 30 seconds to pull you up. Then they ask you all sorts of qualifying questions. Then they get to your issue. And how much do you think they care about your problem? All they care about is who's the next mailbox number that'll be calling me.
Well, you know the investment I have in my equipment and the investment I'm getting ready to make into my equipment. But you were also one of the first calls when I really decided I was going to make this next upgrade. What's your feelings on this? See what you can find out. Is there anything on the spec? How many other owners of a company are going to get involved in my personal decisions on my equipment upgrades and determine if you feel like it's a viable option that's worth the expense that I'm making, because I've got a substantial investment in equipment, and I mean, your support in making sure I'm making those right decisions is why I'm able to go ahead and then, lay my head down at night knowing what I'm spending.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing is, on a number of occasions, and Jason, you're very mechanically inclined. You're pretty good about taking care of everything on your truck. But we have had a number of situations where an owner-operator will call us because they're having some type of an issue. I mentioned one just a couple weeks ago. Driver was making a delivery in West Tennessee, and the truck broke down. We were able to arrange to get a rental truck. We were able to arrange to get another truck to move that tractor up to the shop. It made all these arrangements. We've also had drivers that are broken down on the side of the road, and we were able to help them search for roadside service, help them find the location. We've been able to advance money in some cases. Where I don't consider myself a bank, but it's a partnership. So we've in some cases advanced money for repairs. A lot of times, and I understand when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you need a repair and this guy doesn't take an American Express, what do you do? So we've been able to do that. And we do answer the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so these types of things all come up, which become very difficult when you are on your own and you don't have that support. I'm going to jump on really quick and read some of these comments, because a few of these are good comments. And Ronald says, everyone has to start somewhere. And that's true. Everybody does. If you want to get your own authority, if that's truly the direction you're going, it's not a bad time to do it now. That being said, Jason, you were ready to get your authority. You were going to do it. You decided to make the move here first. and you found a lot of value in using this as a stepping stone, you're able to build the relationships. You're building relationships with brokers that if you do get your own authority later, you'll be able to take those relationships with you. You're able to develop your business and your model now. And then when you get your authority later, it's not as big of a drastic drop. Now, when you came from one of the mega fleets that really held your hand in a lot of ways, and in holding your hand held you back in a lot of ways. I hold your hand only to help you move forward.
Correct.
All right, Elizabeth came in. She said we have a
growth that I have seen. The growth that I've seen with the transition over here and the actual freedom to be the one that determines what I actually do is beyond anything I ever thought possible.
Absolutely. And I, even myself, I have been absolutely amazed at what Patriot Star is becoming. And I said it on the show last week or the week before, it's not my company anymore. I just work in the office, and I sign the papers, but it's your company. It's everybody here has developed this company, and everybody's got an equal share in how we run the thing. It's not just me. I try to do everything I can to make it better and to bring more opportunity. But ultimately, what I'm learning from you all, the owner operators, and the feedback I'm getting, we created our own Facebook group just for the group, just for our drivers, and the back and forth that we're getting there is phenomenal. A lot of good feedback both ways, and it's been phenomenal. It's been awesome. It's been absolutely awesome. I had another comment about people were going back and forth talking about, well, you're giving up 20%, and they did the numbers and said, well, that could be $50,000 or $60,000 a year that you're giving up. Maybe it could be $50,000 or $60,000 a year, but remember, for a new owner operator with a new carrier, I'm seeing numbers right now in certain states, Florida being one of them, and every state is different, but I'm seeing numbers of $20,000 to $25,000 a year as a startup carrier for insurance cost alone. Figure need 25 to 30% down. You might need $5,000 to $7,000 down payment for these, and that's just your first year. And your second year is usually in that same ballpark, and you might not get a break until the third year. And by the time you get into your third year, insurance rates have caught up to that. It may not get a break in your third year. Our insurance rates have been going up roughly 10% a year over the past 3 or 4 years. So, if it'd be $12,000 and over the next couple of years, you're at 10% more. By the time you qualify to get a discount, a break on your insurance rate, that rate has caught up. So it could very well be $20,000 to $25,000 indefinitely. So take that $50,000 to $60,000 that you're giving the carrier, cut it in half. Then take off the opportunity cost, because chances are you won't be making that same money that in the beginning. I just mentioned we have runs right now. 2 of our vans are on it. They could not have gotten it. Number one, if they didn't already have that relationship built, because this is a customer that called us. We've worked with them before. They recognize us. Number two, they needed at least 2 trucks in the area that were able to do it. I've got other runs around the country, but these 2 trucks needed to be in this area. It wouldn't have happened. And so, yeah, when you're with these mega carriers, you might be able to make some decent money, and they've got this leverage, and the brokers are be able to pass this on. But you go on your own, chances are the first few years you're going to cut your income down because you don't have the relationships. You're still getting established. So those numbers are just funny math to me. We're going to go to Josh. Josh is another one of our pros. Josh, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Kenny. How are you today?
Fantastic. And you're one of the drivers that's on this dedicated run the next couple of weeks that I was talking about.
Yep. Very light run. The great opportunity, especially with freight coming out of the Florida area. It's one of my favorite areas to be in. So it's not something that I could have done working with. I've worked with a lot of the big mega carriers, you know, Swift, Prime, U.S. Express, family members that have their own authority. This was not an opportunity that I would have ever had there, just because, you know, a lot of those mega carriers, like you mentioned earlier, you know, you go up to Maine and they don't have freight coming out. You know, you're dealing with their particular load boards where, as a carrier, the way that you've got Patriot Star set up, I don't deadhead far if I have to. So it definitely allowed me to expand.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you're the one that you couldn't quite make it down here because of the weather. I was able to go pick load the trailer for you, or Elizabeth was actually. She went and loaded the trailer for you, and it was here in the yard. We were able to drop and hook, and you were able to keep going. Had it not been for that, we would have had to give that load back.
We didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the best, you know, opportunities for the van side that has come up in the past few months, and it's dedicated for 3 weeks.
It was a very good opportunity. I was very surprised, you know, when speaking with the customer and whatnot, be able to do that. And the rate that we got was made it worthwhile. And you know, I didn't know, you know, particularly that they would necessarily need the 2 trucks when we started this, but you know, being at different carriers and whatnot, this is definitely not something that would have ever came up. I mean, I was at other carriers, and it felt almost like you were being held back and repressed a little bit. I recall quite a few times where I've turned trucks in, and the truck that I'm currently in before I came to Patriot Star, I was going to turn it in as well and find something different, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors for a lot of the carriers, so it's very important to do your homework and find out what kind of freight that you can haul, you know, what kind of policies that they've got in order for you to get your next load. There's a lot of self-dispatching companies, Roadrunner, Landstar, Schneider. But what is that freight? Is it spot carrier market, where you're able to negotiate your rates and inevitably control your truck and, you know, make your destiny of how you're going to succeed that year? Or is it a pre-negotiated rate like I was seeing at Landstar, where someone's already negotiated it, you just so happen to be in the area and are looking on the load board and like, hey, well, this is my only option out, where you very well know that you're in an area with great freight, but that's just all they had. You know, places like Dart, you know, they go by your hours of service, and you've got a planner in the background that inevitably, as a lease carrier to them, is saying, hey, I'm controlling this truck. It's in my best interest to plan you and go here, because this is where we need you to go. It's not necessarily the best thing for the independent contractor that's paying for that truck. So there's a lot of homework that goes into being leased to somebody, and whether or not it's actually beneficial versus just being a company driver working for them and not necessarily taking the blunt of being responsible for the truck, the insurance, the fuel, the manpower that it takes to drive the truck. So it's a lot of homework to do.
A quick story on that. In my transition from going from just being local work from what I used to do the gravel trains up in Michigan, and before I went over the road, my first over-the-road owner-operator experience, I tried leasing on with one of the mega fleets, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the freight hub of the country. Just about every bit of freight in the world, in the country, passes through Atlanta, Georgia at one time. And I was sitting there at their yard for about 2 days waiting for something to come up. They just did not have anything in Atlanta. And they told me, well, it's a slow area for them. For them, there is plenty of freight in Atlanta, Georgia. Whether or not it pays anything is one thing, but there is a lot of freight out there. They just didn't have any customers in that area. So they told me they didn't have anything. And they tried to deadhead me from there a couple 100 miles into North Carolina to pick some stuff up. Now, granted, I only tried this company out for a couple of weeks because I saw, how things were going. But that's how it is at some carriers. If they don't have freight in that area, you're done. Now, somebody on Facebook says this sounds like an infomercial for Patriot Star. And in a way it is, only because it's my experiences I'm basing all of this off of. But that's not the point of this. The point of this is make sure that you get in with a carrier that is able to sorry, I'm reading some of the comments as I go. But make sure you get into a carrier that is able to provide you the resources. Now, he said a lease driver is a step above a company driver, but below an owner-op with authority. And not necessarily. When you lease a truck on, you're running, and I talked about this on a previous show, you have to recognize who your customer is and what you're doing. When you lease a truck to a carrier, you essentially are a leasing company. You're not a trucking company. Depends on what your business model is. I know people that have several trucks, dozens of trucks leased onto multiple carriers, and they look at those carriers as their customer. An owner-operator with their own authority that just goes out and works strictly with brokers, it's essentially the same business model. They're just taking on all that risk. They're taking all the risk, but they're still providing their services to a third party, which happens to be the broker. So absolutely, I understand the comment, but it's all part of the business model. There are definitely ways. I see Justin Woody is in here. He is growing a fleet. I think he's up to 5 trucks now. He's leased to a carrier, and he says that's why he's building his fleet before he goes independent, for all the things we're talking about here. Most people jump on authority too soon. And I agree with that, which is why I'm bringing this up. Now, I do think somebody that's motivated, has the right business plan and the right model, it is a good time to get your own authority. And I support you getting your own authority. Just understand that there's nothing wrong with leasing to a carrier. And I do think what I provide here at Patriot Star is one of the best opportunities. I know there are other carriers out there similar to this. To plug a couple, Green Miles is one. Shane Ferris and I are good friends, and I would recommend that you go to Green Miles. If you want to do reefer work, Green Miles is great. Another might be, the F2F Transport. Used to be Farm to Fleet. F2F Transport has a similar model, but they are growing into where they're not the small company anymore. You might start becoming the mailbox number with a company that's, excess of 150 plus trucks. So you have to be careful about that. All right. So that being said, Jason, are you still with us? Did you have any closing thoughts?
Pretty much. I mean, you've covered everything that, that I feel like is the major benefits of the small carrier, the group, the community that we have, the group that we have is what is the major benefit of, being on with a small carrier. And it far and exceeds what I am giving up is what I have found. I mean, my intentions were to be on my own in the very near future, but that has all changed now. My plans have totally changed. Everything we've done has changed because of what I have saw that we were able to develop. I've already, in a short time, we have brokers that are calling us directly and just flat asking, where are our trucks at? And that is not going to happen if you're on there on one-on-one, at a very large scale. And that's the benefit that I am seeing that makes it worth, that the risk of exposure and stuff, it just to me, it totally changed my thought process.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with all of that. So, I just want to put this out there. I think a lot of people have it in their mind that, and I've said it before, they start as a driver, company driver, and they see that somebody else leased a truck, and they think, well, they're making more money, I'm going to go lease a truck. Then they do the exact same job. They still deliver freight the same way. They still scan the paperwork the same way, do the exact same job. Then they decide, hey, I'm going to buy the truck, be an owner-operator, and lease it on to a different carrier. But essentially, they do the exact same job. They never change anything. They own the job now. Then they say, well, this guy has their own authority. And everybody says, lease operator or lease to a carrier, I'm not really an owner-operator. There's a stigma behind it. And they go get their own authority. And they try to do the same job the same way. The brokers love it that way. The brokers, and that's a lot of what I've talked about on this show in the past, is trying to change your perspective of this. The brokers have rigged the game in their favor because they take advantage of the fact that most single independent truck owner operators with their own authority are essentially doing the job the exact same way they were when they were leased to a carrier. They still run the load, deliver the load. They even want to go transflow the paperwork to some of these carriers or some of these brokers, doing it the exact same way. Nothing changes. For that reason, for those type of people, it's I think extremely important to get into a carrier like Patriot Star that gives you that stepping stone to learn the business at a different from a different perspective, and understand the relationship that you have with these brokers and the customers, and understand more of the back office so that you can make that transition and be more successful at it. So you don't end up just owning a job and taking on all of the risk, doing the exact same job and making a little bit more money, maybe. I absolutely know people that lose money as an independent owner operator with their own authority. They go broke. They make less money. I know for a fact there are carriers out there that you could lease to and make more money than if you got your own authority. I guarantee it. So that being said, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for calling in for your support. Josh, you're still on. Thank you as well. Put you guys back on hold. And we're going to wrap things up for tonight. Thank you all for joining me. This has been the Trucking with Authority show. I'm Kenny Long, and remember, always dream big and aim high, strategize your plan, and get out there and earn your success, because you don't deserve anything, and only you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.